Right. Right. Feel free to stop me at any point if you want clarifications on any of the questions that you might have. The main plan for today is just to kind of give you an overview of the internal so you guys can get started on it. It is a research-based internal. I will do a couple lessons of teaching just to help fill in gaps content-wise. And you're more than welcome to ask me questions when you guys are doing your research and things like that if you need some help just kind of processing it. So this one is a standard from Earth and Space Science, which is why it's ESS, so slightly different from the chemistry. But we can mix and match the chemistry together to create our level 2 science courses, which is what you guys are in. This one is very similar to one that you guys are going to be that they do in biology. Any of you guys taking bio? Okay, so just be mindful the skill sets you're learning here you can use in the bio assessment. On the validity one, they'll probably do that one towards the end. And you might also notice that some of the resources are doubled up. So the idea with this task is we're looking at the validity of information that is communicated to the public. So we're looking at scientific information of a social science issue, so a scientific issue that affects society, and we're checking to see, is that information valid? So is it true or not true? That's what we're thinking about. In this case, we are examining it under the lens of Earth and space science. If you're taking biology, you will do the same thing, but in a biological context. I'm not sure if Ms. Quigley is going to do vaping or vaccines for that topic. In our topic, we are looking at the plastic rubbish in the oceans, so basically plastics in the ocean. Have you guys ever heard of like the giant like trash island? That's what you guys are going to be learning about, is the trash island. And we're going to basically say, is that information about the trash island accurate or not? Is it true or not? So that's what we're looking at for this assessment. It goes achieve, merit, and excellence. The difference between the achieve, merit, and excellence is basically the depth you go into your report. So what you write up about the rubbish in the oceans, and also the analysis you do on the validity of the sources that you're looking at. So there's kind of two components to this assessment. All right, questions so far? All right. So you are examining this issue for plastic rubbish in the ocean and also evaluating. So there's two skill sets that we're looking at for this internal. You're allowed to share resources and discuss the issue with others, but all the writing needs to be on your own. So individual reports are handed in, but you're allowed to chat with each other. You're allowed to chat with me to kind of unpack the resources and things like that. I will be providing you with some of the sources, but you are more than welcome to find your own. It's just to help get you started. And you can take information from any source. You can use newspapers, you can use books, you can use pamphlets, journal articles, websites, videos, films. Like if you find a film on Netflix that you want to watch that's related to plastic in the ocean, you're welcome to use that as a source. When it comes to understanding the perspective of plastic in the ocean, there's three main things you want to think about. The first off is, why is that happening? What is causing this accumulation of plastic in the ocean? So why? Whether will it ever break down? So that's kind of a little bit of the chemistry component, which is why I've put it into this course. And I'll talk a little bit about plastics and how they're structured and why they can't break down easily. And then the last thing is there anything that we can do about it? Because it is a problem. We don't want those plastics in there, and you'll see that it affects ecosystems and things like that. So that's kind of the three main points there. And that's our first kind of thing that we're doing, examining the issue, making sure you understand what that issue is. On the next page here, we're looking at the two other things that will be required for your assessment. The second thing is evaluation. So basically, I want you to evaluate the source and tell me if it is valid and if it is biased. And I'll talk about bias and validity today, and then I'll basically act as the first lesson in this topic. The last thing you then need to do is combine what you've learned, making sure that you factor in bias and the validity of the sources that you're looking at and draw a conclusion on the issue. So it's basically like a summary, and it's your opinion. Do you think this is actually a problem? That sort of stuff. We good so far? And like I said, I'll show you guys where things are on Google Classroom. The other thing I need to collect as evidence for this assessment is that you have processed the information and collected your research. So I'll show you how I want that kind of organized. When we're talking about processing the information, I want to see that you've interacted with the text and understood it. So that could be things like you're highlighting, underlining, or copying down relevant information. You're keeping a list of like key points, and you're finding like definitions of words and stuff like that. All of those are going to show me that you have unpacked the resource that you've been given, or sorry, the source that you've been given to understand it. So I need some evidence of that. And the good news is I only need 3 for the achieved. If you're aiming for higher marks, then I'm going to look for more processing because it shows that you're doing that in-depth or that comprehensive understanding. Cool. So this is just a list of things to help you kind of think about how you evaluate your sources. And like I said, I only need 3 to get the achieved. First thing is it valid? So if we're trying to assess if something's valid, you are kind of backing up that. Actually, I'll hold off on talking about these things because that's going to be actually the first lesson. But this is to help kind of hint at like what sort of things you should be asking yourself when you're evaluating it. Cool. And then there is a written report component, and I'll show you what that looks like. It's more or less pretty repetitive, these instructions. And then the last page here are a list of websites that I have provided for you. Remember, you are not limited to these websites. You are welcome to find your own. But it's just to help you get started. And then the last thing that I've provided for you guys in the packet, and you are allowed to take it with you, is the assessment criteria, so you guys understand what the achieved, the merit, and the excellence is looking for. So like I said, for the achieved, 4 things that I need to make sure that you guys pass. The first thing is I need to see evidence that you've collected and processed your information. So I need to see a portfolio of your sources. Second thing is that you need to be talking about the report itself, so defining the issue of plastics in the ocean and describing 2 factors that affect that issue. I need you to comment on the validity of the sources you've used, and then a conclusion. So that's all you need to do for an achieved. If you're aiming for the higher marks like merit or excellence, it's very similar to the achieved, just in more depth. So for merit, when it comes to your sources, you're using a wider range of sources, not just the bare minimum of 3. I would say probably about 5. The other thing I would probably be looking for is the quality of your analysis. So like for an achieve level student, I would expect maybe highlighting, underlining, a few annotations. If you're aiming for a merit, I would expect that you're highlighting and there's more annotations. And I'll show you what I mean by like how you can do annotations. So like you guys see me do annotations all the time in class where I'll like make a mark on the piece of paper. That sort of stuff is annotations. But if you're doing it online, I'll show you what you can do to annotate online. This is just more in depth, and you're explaining the factors, and I want 3 or more, whereas this one only requires 2. This for the validity of your sources, I want to see some comparison. So I want to see that you're saying this source has this problem, this source has that problem. So just like holding the 2 and like actually like analyzing them together instead of just looking at them as like separate ideas. Like this one is valid, this one's not valid. You can compare and be like, this one's more valid than this one because, that sort of thing. And then your conclusion here is different. The main thing about this conclusion is that I want you to justify your stance relating it back to your Earth and space science information. So that's the thing that we need to compare. Questions so far? No? All right. And the last thing is if you're aiming for excellence, again, it's just that step up from the merit with the quality, a more comprehensive range of the processing. So I put down 8. I'm probably not going to be hard on that 8 number. It's going to be dependent on the quality of like your analyzing of your sources and things like that. Comprehensive, so that means you're going really in depth and you really discuss it. You're comparing things. You're kind of doing more of that abstract level thinking. If you're aiming for merit, I would be looking a lot for words like because and therefore, because that's showing linkage and like explanation. But if you are trying to get to the excellence level, I'm looking more for the big picture and the abstract. I would really suggest, if you're trying to go for the excellence, to make a mind map before you start planning your essay, so that way you can really think about how everything links together and you can make a really nice cohesive write-up. So do kind of keep that in mind. And you see, this is what I mean by annotations. I'm writing down extra notes. The evaluation of it is, again, for the excellence, just making sure that you have that in-depth kind of understanding, and then your position on plastics really just justified. So it's just the difference between a merit and the excellence is how well do you explain things and how much depth you go into. Cool. All right. And I'm happy to give you guys feedback as you guys are working to let you know if it's at the right level or not. Cool. So let's look at Google Classroom now so you guys can see what I have. So the first thing I want to point out to you guys is the assessment, so you know where it is. So it is this internal here. And we'll go over to the instructions. So here is just a digital copy of the task sheet. So if you want an online version of what you guys have on paper, so you always have a reference to it. Here is the marking schedule. Again, so you have an online copy of the paper copy. And then these two things are going to be where I'm going to be looking for your report. So first thing is your logbook. So your logbook is where you're going to keep track of the sources that you are using. I need a minimum of 3 sources for the achieved. If you're aiming for anything higher, just copy this template and put it down lower and add more and more sources. When it comes to your sources, I want the original URL. So for example, let me show you how I want you guys to organize this. So if we go to the student copy, and let's say we go to, I don't actually like that Greenpeace one, I don't think. Let's go to the Guardian and open up the Guardian. No, okay, we won't do that, we'll just copy it. So I want a copy of the original source, so that way I know where to find it. And then this is the article here. So the other thing I want you to do is show me the evidence of processing. So what I've done for each one of you guys is I've created a folder for you guys to store your resources, and with that folder I've shared it with you. So if we go to Angela's folder, nothing's in here yet. Let's say you do want to do to use this resource and you want to analyze it. I want you to create a Google Doc. And I want you to copy the text in this article. Like that. Hopefully it's letting me copy. There we go. And now that it's in a document, what you can then do is you can highlight, underline, and analyze your information in this document. And that way I can see that you have highlighted this text here, like that. Cool. Let's say there's words you don't know, so you can highlight that, you can comment, and you can write down that you're Googling that word and finding your definition. So like that stuff is what I'm looking for. The other thing is you can comment, and that way you can write like annotations about the text, so you can like summarize it. Like, oh, like, ooh, I like this as an like introduction. So that shows me that you're interacting with the text, and that way you're working with it. Then what I want you to do is I want to make sure that I have a copy of it. So we copy the link, and that way we put this link into the evidence, so that way I can easily see where all your sources are and how you processed it. I'm happy if you don't want to do your processing digitally. You can print it out and you can write on a piece of paper. If you're more paper oriented, that's fine, and then you can just hand in the paper to me when you're done with the assessment. I'm okay with that too. Other things you can do is I know there's apps that you can use to like highlight, which you can see on my screen here, that I can highlight and comment on my websites. I'm happy if you want to download an app or add an extension to it, so that way yours also does that as well. Just make sure to take screenshots of it and put it in a doc so that way I can find it, because that will just be tied to your account. I can't access your annotations that way. The other thing you can do is you can like type up a summary of notes if you want instead, so you don't have to copy the whole article over. You can just type up your key points that you've learned from that article. Or if you're watching a video, you can just create a Google Doc and type up your notes from that video. So lots of different options there. I do need to see a timeline of you processing it, so that way you just don't like make it up. So include the date that you've done the work and a summary of what you worked on. So maybe you say like, I read the first 2 paragraphs, sort of thing. Some of these sources might take you multiple days to do it. Some sources might only take you 1 day, so you don't need all the rows. But I just figured I'll let you guys have that space if you need it. So that's that bit there. And then the last thing for the internal bit is that I have a template for you guys to write your report. I want to leave it quite open-ended so you guys can kind of choose how you want to write things. But what I've done is I've given you a list of the key things that you need to pass. So you need to talk about an introduction and define what plastics in the oceans are and what that means. Talk about the causes of that. Why is it a problem? That sort of thing. The validity of the information to the public. And then lastly, the conclusion on your issue. So is it a concern? Why or why not? And then lastly, your reference list. Cool. So that's everything for that internal. 2 other things I want to point out, just so you guys have the help, is that there's useful resources for the internal. The first off is my Google site, so I will put everything on there. So I'll put this recording on there too. I'll put all the lessons that we have together on here as well. But the other thing that I think that's probably more useful for you guys is the exemplars on NZQA. So NZQA has model answers for this internal. It's on a different topic, but it gives you an idea of the depth of what I'm looking for an achieve, for a merit, for an excellence. So that's useful, and you can download the whole thing. Now their one was on a mass extinction event, so can't use it, different topic, but it gives you an idea of how much people were writing when it came to an excellence level answer, and you also can have the comments that NZQA has put forward to say, why is this an excellence? What is this? They say this is a low excellence, and they've given a reason why. So same thing with the merit and the achieve, they do give reasons why. So that's useful as a benchmark, so you know if your work is there or not, but I'm also happy to look at your things and let you know. Cool. All right. What questions do you have? Following that up. Sorry, I'll just delete that. So Angela, you don't have that in your folder. Cool. Okay, I will stop this recording and I'll do a quick crash course on validity of sources, and then you guys can start your research. Huh? You got a music lesson? Okay. Cool. So